Alright, continuing on. We got, I know that the mic has been picking up wind noise. I put a different cover on it. I've got a dead cat coming, and I've also got a shotgun mic coming for this thing, so excuse the audio again. This seems to be an ongoing battle. In either case, I've clipped it on my shirt a lot lower now. Hopefully the wind won't hit it as bad. So, and the neighbor's weed whacking right there. But back to Ventura and the trip now, trying to get the hell out of California. So anyway, I left Ventura, and that fucker from the orphans there with his bike shop, he never did pay me. So I was running low on money at this point, and I went back to San Bernardino, and I went back to the do come all over the place motel, and the same people were still there. The guy that I'd met with the body shop and everything else, he was still there, and I kind of gave him a quick thing, you know, that I needed to get the hell out of California. I wasn't, you know, gonna hang around and deal with that kind of shit. And you know, if he had any work, and he said, well, they kind of gave up on that, and there were about 4 or 5 of them that were going to work the Arizona State Fair in about a week. And he said, you know, they had plenty of work there, and he could guarantee me a job on his crew, which they had the milk can toss thing, and I said, sure, you know. He says, yeah, you can make a grand or you know, more in 2 weeks' time. And I thought, shit, that'll get me to where I want to go. So we hung around there, and you know, we turned a couple of the girls, and actually a couple of the girls went with us to work the fair. But you know, they kept us in money enough to live, pay the rent, get some food, and buy a few little drugs here and there. And so when the time came, we left and we went to Arizona. So basically the job that I had was making sure that nobody was cheating, that none of the people working the stand were you know, stuffing money away, and that you know, if any of the people got too drunk or irate with one of the girls working the stand, you know, like a little mini security job, if you will, which I thought, great, you know. And I was getting a commission on whatever they took in. So I think it was the 5th or 6th night. It was a weekend on a Saturday, and somebody got into it with one of the girls, and you know, said he was getting cheated, and you know, he was all drunk and everything else. And anyway, you know, I went over and I told him, you know, just move on. He got pissed, and he crumbled up some bills and he threw it in her face and shit. And I grabbed him by the shirt, and he took a swing at me, kind of clocked me in the head, didn't even feel it. And you know, I always had weapons on me, brass knuckles, shit like that. So I already had my hand in my pocket. I put on the brass knuckles and I gave him one whack, and down he went. And about this time, that, you know, crowd had gathered and shit, and cops were coming that were on the grounds there at the fair. And I figured, you know, well, if I throw the knuckles, they'll see it, you know. So I put them in my pocket, and cop comes over, asks me what happened, you know, and he was about ready to let it all blow off, till some old broad, some old cunt, said he put something in his pocket. You the cop says, "What do you put in your pocket?" And he's looking down, and he's, "Let me see," I pulled him out, and he says, "All right," he says, "Look," he says, I got to take you in. He says, "It's concealed weapon, it's brass knuckles." He says, "If you carried a gun open, it'd be legal," but he says, "You can't do that." So I think at the time it was a misdemeanor. It was a $100 fine. So off to jail I went. And, the cop apologized to me for taking me in. I mean, he was a great cop, but I understood. And with all those people around, he didn't have much of a choice. So, anyway, the guys from the fair, they bailed me out, and it was a $100 fine. I didn't even have to go to court or anything, and worked the next week. I worked a total of a week and a half, I think, and the fair closed down. I made $1,400, which was really good money. And I got on my bike, and I hauled ass back to Florida. So this entire California trip took me roughly 6 months, and it was quite an adventure. The bike only had one breakdown. It blew an oil line, and I got that fixed up in the parking lot of an auto parts store. I had steel braided lines with the old ones with a plastic liner in them that, they were more for show. And I just bought rubber oil line and put it on, filled the bike up with oil, and on the way I went. Of course, changing points, I don't know how many times, maybe 4 or 5 sets of points. Luckily, the points were the same as, I think, a Chevy 6-cylinder, and you could buy them at any Kmart, auto parts store. Any of those places had points, and they were cheap. So, it wasn't the best of trips or anything, and it was quite an adventure. A lot of things that I weren't aware of, being 21 years old, after the military, being kind of a tough guy and shit, and thinking I had it all down, I'd gotten into a little bit of a pickle. So anyway, when I got back to Florida, I did a walk-in with the Outlaws and talked to them about it, told them what happened, because I really didn't want to get in the middle of anything if anything came down, because, maybe they were thinking that the Outlaws sent somebody out to California to, I mean, I could just imagine all kinds of crazy shit coming out of it, so I figured I better come clean, tell what had happened, and, just so that they knew about it and everything. Plus, I hooked up with all the old crew, and I was still riding with a few of the guys, here and there, and, it was a thing to do. And, that kind of concludes the whole video on the trip to California. Very exciting. The times were a lot different. Jumping from job to job. I think I washed dishes a few times too. Pumped gas. I humped trucks. God, what else did I do? Oh, I cut concrete for a couple of days in a plant. Guy needs somebody to to work a concrete cutter to cut the floor, cracks in the floor out. I did that. Let's see what else I do. The memory's kind of fuzzy. They say if you can't remember the 60s or 70s, or if you can remember the 60s or 70s, you weren't there. Well, yeah, it's partially true. You hit on some of the high points, and this is all going from memory. I didn't write anything down. I mean, I've got pictures in a picture album, but realistically, the albums are so old, and they've got that sticky stuff for the pictures that I can't even transfer the pictures onto the computer. So, and holding up a photo album just isn't my thing, but yeah, that's it, and maybe next time I'll get into a video of doing about all the different bikes I've had. Somebody asked about things I did during my professional career as a mechanic and a machinist, some of the accomplishments, some of the things I've built, and I've made videos on the drag cars, and I know that I never finished or did the video on Starship 2.5, the last drag car I had, which was a Super Pro car. Because it just wasn't enough interest in doing them and compiling all the videos and giving all the technical information was too much work for very little appreciation. Not that I want to slap on the back for it, but what's the sense of it if 50 people are going to watch it, and those 50 people might have enjoyed it, but it's just not worth it to me. It's part of my past. I know what I did, so I can glaze over some of that. Still like to talk about hobbies, some of the hobbies I've had, and which kind of melt into what I did professionally. And then I think who was it? Let me think now. I can't remember the names. Jesus, CRS. Anyway, he asked me to do one about the businesses I've owned, because I have owned three businesses in my life, and actually 4. When I came up here, I did open up shop legally, but not in a full-time capacity. So I can go into one of those videos. Let me know, guys, if you want to hear any of this shit, or continue on with it. There's a couple other little riding stories, going to rodeos, going to events, and but they're all short, small little things that happened, and nothing too much to make a whole video on, I think. Of course, I know this one turned into a God only knows how long of a rambling video, so hopefully splitting it into 2 parts made it a little bit easier to pay attention to, because I know the average attention span on a video is about 10 minutes, unless the subject is really interesting. And I don't know how interesting this was. It was just something from back in the day, and something I remember fairly well because of what happened. And I probably left out a lot of small details, a lot of little things that happened at the campgrounds, at the parks, at different jobs I went to. Some of the things that happened doing some of the drugs that I'd never done before, like peyote and angel dust, which I didn't enjoy either one. And crap like that I kind of left out of the story, because it would have made it into a 10-hour long ordeal. So in either case, I'm going to continue sitting out here, have a few more beers, watch this fire smolder away, and half of the wood is wet, but it's burning all right. So that's it, gentlemen. Until the next video, talking like Elmer Fudd, video, you guys take care, and auf Wiedersehen.